Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Sri Ramakrishna, Jai Ma. Well, I have a happy little thing to tell you. Yesterday, I went to a private celebration of the Master's birthday. It was his actual lunar calendar birthday yesterday. It turns out there is a group of about 60 people in and around Doraville here that have a private group. When I told Swami Sarvadevananda about the invitation, he encouraged me to go. I think I would have gone anyway, but they were very pleased to hear that Swami Sarvadevananda will be here May 17th, 18th, and 19th. And it turns out that there are probably 3 people in that group who would like the Swami to offer them Diksha. So it sounds like it's going to be a very productive visit for Swami Sarvadevananda in May. And I'm sure he will encourage that group to meet more regularly than they do now. And we may end up with a private group, a private center, so to speak, over in that direction. These are all Indian people. When I went yesterday evening, and I was with them for some time, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. I didn't see any Westerners at all. So they haven't been, I think, reaching out to Westerners. Nevertheless, the Swami Sarvadevananda would encourage them, if they form a private group that meets more regularly, that might then become a private center. He would encourage them to reach out to Westerners. So before we go ahead with Swami Prabhavananda's How to Know God, is there anything at all that anyone would like to add or comment or say, either left over from our study last week or anything in reaction to what I just said?
Hari Om Shankaraji, I have a friend who has been looking forward for it, so I'm going to inform him that Swami is coming so that he would come for the Diksha also.
Good, good, good. Okay, be sure and tell him to get in touch with me directly.
Yes, yes.
The Swami is looking to me to help him organize this and to organize his calendar.
Okay,
so
sure.
Tell him to email me, give him my email address, or tell him to go on the website.
Yes.
And because the Swami will be looking to me to coordinate the people here who are looking for further spiritual instruction. So thank you, Balaji. That's good. That's excellent. That brings us up to about 8, I think.
Okay.
It's going to be quite a morning on May the 18th, because we have a nice breakfast for everyone after they've taken Diksha.
Shankaraji, maybe yes. When the Swami comes here, maybe is that a good idea to invite them to come to the center?
Well, we are hoping to open the center by May 1st.
Yes.
This is not in any way a promise of that,
Yes.
but it looks like things are trending in that direction.
Yes.
Unless things reverse course and there's another surge or a new variant or something, the thought is that may be able to open on May 1st. So the center will be open when the Swami gets here. That's our hope. It's not a firm plan, but it is a
Yes.
hope. Anything else from anyone? And thank you, Balaji. All right. Well, we will begin. We'll start again here. Human love is the highest emotion most of us know. It frees us to some extent from our egoism in our relation to one or more individuals. Human love is still possessive and exclusive. Love for the Atman is neither. Human love is exclusive and possessive. Jealousy arises and so on, and all kinds of things happen, as we know, in human relationships where human love is involved. The Swami says, love for the Atman is neither possessive nor exclusive. We readily admit that it is better to love people for what they really are than merely for their beauty, their intelligence, their strength, their sense of humor, or some other quality. But it is only a vague and relative phrase. What people really are is the Atman, nothing less. What people really are is the Atman. And as Agnivalkya points out in the Big Forest Upanishad, the Brihadaranya Upanishad, that it is only for the sake of the self or the Atman that we're drawn to anything at all. A human being or a Ferrari. The self is there in any and every objective bit of reality. And it's pointed out in a long treatise in the Big Forest Upanishad that it is only for the sake of the self that we are attracted to and maintain a relationship with anyone. So what people really are is the Atman, nothing less. And so that's why we're attracted to them, as the Swami said. All of their qualities, all of their upadhis are just part of their covering over the Atman. To love the Atman in ourselves is to love it everywhere. Now that is a statement that you might want to just engrave on your heart. To love the Atman in ourselves is to love it everywhere. Love thy neighbor as thyself. If you love yourself, your true self, you will indeed, quite spontaneously, love thy neighbor. To love the Atman in ourselves is to love it everywhere. And to love the Atman everywhere is to go beyond any manifestation of nature to the reality within nature. If you remember, this sutra says that your liberation can only happen when you're finished with your attraction, your desire to involve yourself with anything within nature, capital N, which means Maya or Mother's creation. So To love the Atman everywhere is to go beyond any manifestation of nature to the reality within nature. So this is the great secret of liberation. To go beyond any manifestation to the reality within nature. It isn't that you stop loving nature. You love it for what it truly is. And if you read the testimony of the saints in that book, Love Poems from God, you will see poem after poem that talks about just exactly this. Such a love is too vast to be understood by ordinary minds, and yet it is simply an infinite deepening and expansion of the little limited love that we all experience. To love someone, even in the usual human matter, is to get a brief, dim glimpse of something within that person which is tremendous, awe-inspiring, and eternal. In our ignorance, we think that something is unique. He or she, we say, is like nobody else. And of course, that's true. Each person is unique. It's true, but not in the way we normally think about it. He or she, we say, is like nobody else. Yes, of course. That is because our perception of the reality is clouded and obscured by the external manifestations, the character and individual qualities of the person we love, and by the way in which our own ego sense reacts to them. Now, I think that's a good place to pause and ask if there's any reaction to this, either some wisdom from your own experience, some comment you'd like to add, or any concern you'd like to raise, or any question you'd like to ask. And please be generous with us and yourself by, as you're moved to, share. This is studying the art of spirituality together. Anything at all from anyone? I mean, the Swami has said some pretty powerful stuff here.
Yeah, the first sentence we started talking about, I think that is really wonderful. That is, the Swami is talking about, we have to, whatever we see in the nature, we have to see the underlying Atman in it. That is the sentence, that's what he was saying. Go beyond any manifestation of nature to the reality within nature.
Yes, that's exactly what Agnavalkya is talking about in the Big Forest Upanishad. That it is that within anything that we are attracted to that is attracting us. We, in our ignorance, confuse it with the superficial aspects of it. And it isn't as if we're to ignore the superficial aspects. No, no, no. Love them, but love them for what they are. The Saguna Atman, Atman with characteristics, with qualities, which embodies itself as each of these breathing stardust spacesuits that we have. I, an embodied being endowed with intellect, life, breath, and their functions. Thank you, Balaji. Anything else from anyone? Okay.
So just a reaction.
Yes.
On one hand, it seems like we're in the Rajo line, but it seems like when we're talking about love that's greater bhakti yoga. When we're talking about understanding the Atman everywhere, that's Gyan yoga. So are we having a mixed message here because the Swamiji is from the Vedanta line, or is this is how truly this needs to be interpreted?
Well, I don't think that Swami would give us a mixed message. You, in your mind, and this is wonderful, have interpreted it in these three ways. But mind you, Swami Vivekananda said, by one or more or all of these, go forward and be free. So it's not a mixed message to integrate the teachings of the four yogas. It is simply to observe that they each approach this same divorce from the superficial and apparent and marriage to the reality. Each yoga does it and sees it in its own way. That's why there are four of them. But they're not meant to be practiced exclusively. They can be, but that's not what Swami Vivekananda gestures to when he says, each soul is potentially divine. The goal of human life is to manifest that divinity. Do this by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, one or more or all four of these, and be free. So from here, at least, Bhaskar, it doesn't seem to be a mixed message. It seems to be an integrated message.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And of course, you're free to see it in your own way. I'm just saying how it seems from here. Okay. Anyone else? Thank you. That was a very well-reasoned analysis of what the Swami was saying. So we just perhaps have two different views of what it meant.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Yes. I believe there's such a wide spectrum going from ignorance to knowledge of the real self. Is the extreme ignorance could be that you know, hatred, you know, and then you move from hatred to love and to see the external beauty, and then move to the internal beauty of the person.
Very well reasoned. Very well reasoned, Nira. Thank you. Yes, that's true. It is a spectrum. As Swami Brahmananda pointed out to a young Swami Prabhavananda, still Abani Ghosh, show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins. So, as you just said, we first see the one, the world of matter, and then, you know, and I wasn't just making an idle comment when I said people are very devoted. I mean, they are really bhaktas to their Ferraris, to their big houses, to all of these things. Everyone is a bhakta in one way or another that is drawn to things of the world. But it is simply an immersion in ignorance. It's not like they're being bad and wrong. That's why the Khandana Bhavana, translated into English as breaker of this world's chain, says, breaker of this world's chain, we adore thee, whom all men love. They simply love, most of them, love that divine presence in a diluted or fragmented form. And so all of these wonders that are created in the world, they too are made of consciousness, as Sri Ramakrishna pointed out. So consciousness and the Atman are one and the same thing, pure consciousness, and the Atman are one and the same thing. So everything is made of that one substance, as Sri Ramakrishna puts it. There's only one substance. And when you reach the roof, he says, that is the highest realization, you see that which of the roof is made, and he says brick, lime, and lime dust. He says, then you see that all the steps that you climbed one by one to reach the roof are also made of brick, lime, and lime dust, the one substance. So, just as you pointed out, Nero, we move from one end of the spectrum, if you will, to the other.
Yes, especially thinking about the current political situation. The war comes out of hatred or ignorance or ego,
Well,
or all of the above.
yes, exactly. So let's not track off into discussion of
Okay.
politics, but yes, you're absolutely right. What is going on in the world at all times is a manifestation of those things that you talked about. It's all falls under the heading, so to speak, of capital I, ignorance, various forms of ignorance.
Brother Shankara, Hari Om.
Yes, Hari Om.
A while ago, it was so nice to hear from you about the meeting between Swami Brahmananda ji and Swami Prabhavananda ji, and you use the expression line of demarcation. I'm not saying something that is profound or don't claim anything other than simply want to share my own experience where there is no line of demarcation. Everything, any change happens so slow and so smooth that there is no point I could say that, yeah, aha, this happened. There's no aha moment, fortunately. And I say fortunately because if it did not happen slow as it did in my life, any change, maybe any sudden change, I would not be able to stand even.
This is a very astute observation, Vijay. Yes, this is why Swami Sri Dharananda points out over and over, if you listen to him in talking, he says, it happens slowly and slowly, my dears. He calls everyone my dear. It happens slowly and slowly, my dears. Yes, some people have aha moments. And as Swami Swahananda used to say to us, those aha moments, they're wonderful, they're lovely gifts. Now turn them into a change in behavior. He would say about those aha moments, those visions or dreams or spontaneous peak experiences. He would say, yes, wonderful, a great gift. Talk to me again about it in 3 months, and
Okay.
see what it is resulted in change in behavior, because the only true measure of spiritual progress, he would repeat to us over and over, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. If we change our thinking without changing our speech and our actions, then it's just intellectual knowledge. It's not spiritual progress. So spiritual progress is made of change in behavior.
Just to clarify, Brother Shankara, when you say change in behavior, is a change in both worldly life and spiritual life?
Well, that's the thing that Vijay was just pointing out, and that he was reacting to Swami Brahmananda's talking to Abani Ghosh. There is no line of demarcation between worldly life and spiritual life, which you yourself remarked on earlier.
Yeah.
They're not separate things. They're just points on a spectrum. So as we
They can
move
happen in
further,
parallel.
well, that's one way of thinking about it. Yes, parallel. Actually, it's probably best to think about it as a single road, the road of our adventure, our spiritual journey. And today we're here, tomorrow we're there. 5 years from now, we're further down the road if we're diligent and persevering in our practice. Um, so you can think about it in parallel, or you can think about it as one razor's edge or road, or as you please.
And actually, it's not about the road, and it's not about the parallel or non-parallel. It's more like as if the chemicals which are dancing, molecules that are dancing, not the chemicals, molecules that are dancing, and in the process of dancing, they are just getting transformed.
Well,
Slowly.
this is a poet's way of saying it, PJ. There are many ways of saying it. So I like the idea of molecules dancing and becoming something different, new. Anything else from anyone? This is good. This is manana. This is what we're doing.
Brother Shankar, I did
Yes.
want some help from you. You had mentioned some profound words of Swami Sri Dharananda ji twice to me, and I didn't write them down at that time. And I've been trying to remember several times, I can't get them back in my mind. If you can help me sometime now or later. It was
Probably
something about
later.
my life is a continuous.
Yeah, probably later, Vijay. Contact me because I don't readily remember what it is, and I don't want to take the class's time by trying to sort that out. So just contact me by phone or however you like, and we'll discuss it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Anything else? Okay. The Swami continues, nevertheless, this weak flash of perception is a valid spiritual experience, and it should encourage us to purify our minds and make them fit for that infinitely greater kind of love. We should purify our minds. It should encourage us to purify our minds and make them fit for that infinitely greater kind of love which always awaits us. This love is not restless or transient like our human love. This love is not restless or transient like our human love. It is secure and eternal and calm. These are the attributes of Saguna Atman. Secure, eternal, and calm. It is absolutely free from desire because lover and beloved have become one. It is absolutely free from desire because lover and beloved have become one. Now, as was pointed out by Bhaskar earlier, that is a bhakta way of talking about it. And there's no question that Swami Prabhavananda was himself a formidable bhakta. I mean, he embodied Narada's Bhakti Sutras. But it is also true of Jnana Yoga. When you have gone beyond the mind, beyond the void, and have become one with Brahman, lover and beloved have become one, because as Adi Shankaracharya points out, you must have love and devotion in order to make any progress in Advaita Vedanta. You must love Brahman. You must love the idea of being beyond all limitation, being the causeless cause. So, and karma yoga and Raja yoga speak of it slightly differently. Lover and beloved have become one. Note the following from the Bhagavad Gita. And when the Swami says, note the following, he's saying, let those who have ears to hear. Note the following from the Bhagavad Gita. Water flows continuously in the ocean, into the ocean. Water flows continually into the ocean, but the ocean is never disturbed. Desire flows into the mind of the seer, but he is never disturbed. The seer knows peace. He knows peace who has forgotten desire. He lives without craving, free from ego, free from pride. So I'll read that again. This is one of the definitions surrounding what is called in the Gita Sthita Prajna, the perfected soul. Water flows continually into the ocean, but the ocean is never disturbed. Desire flows into the mind of the seer, but he is never disturbed. The seer knows peace. He knows peace who has forgotten desire. He lives without craving, free from ego, free from pride. Now, can any of us say that we have attained that state? No. That is the ideal. This is why I say that the spiritual aspirant must practice a very close witnessing of their current way of thinking and therefore speaking and acting, just so that you're very familiar with the contents of your waking awareness. How do I think? How do I speak? How do I act? Just be familiar with it. It is a matter of paying attention from the witness position over time so that you see, this is who I seem to be in this kind of situation, that kind of situation, and so on. And then there is this formulation just given to us from the Gita of what the ideal is. Someone who has forgotten desire. Forgotten. What an interesting word for Krishna to use. It is so far behind you that you have forgotten it. You live without craving, free from ego, free from pride. This is the ideal. So as we hold these two thoughts simultaneously in mind as we go through our days, this is the way I currently see that I'm thinking, therefore speaking and acting, and this is the ideal that has been given to us by Swami Prabhavananda, quoting from the Gita, and so on. This is part of Raja Yoga, and it certainly is mentioned in the yamas and the niyamas, all of this. How to achieve this. These are the first two steps, the first two limbs of yoga that are the first two of the six that are within our ability to do them, to do them as self-effort. So before we go on to the next sutra, is there anything at all from what we've discussed that deserves further attention from your perspective? Any comment from your own wisdom or experience? Any Any concern that this raises or question you'd like to ask?
Hari Om Shankaraji.
Yes, Hari Om, dear.
In that Bhagavad Gita thing, I think there are two words which are very crucial, which I like it. One is, he is never disturbed, and the other one is without craving. These two tells me he has no binding desire at all.
This, yes, you're absolutely right. There is no longer any attachment. This is the ideal. This is the state in which the Sthita Prajna lives. Desire flows through the mind of a Sthita Prajna, like the river flows into the ocean, but the ocean is not stained. Even a river as mighty as the Amazon, you go 60 miles out to sea, you wouldn't know that a river was flowing into it. This is what I've read. So, desire arises. It is part of our prarabdha karma. Adi Shankaracharya comments on it in the last 2 chapters of Vivekachudamani, that as long as you remain embodied, all of that which brought you into this embodiment will continue to manifest itself. But you've forgotten how to attach yourself to it, is what it is just said here in the Gita. Another way of saying it is, you just simply ignore it. You don't water it with your attention, and therefore it is dormant. Anything else? Thank you, Bala. All right.
Just curious as to what chapter and what sloka this is coming from.
What are you talking about now, dear Bhaskar? I don't understand your question.
No, which chapter and which sloka of Bhagavad Gita this is being quoted from?
Oh dear, I'm not good at chapter and verse. I believe this is in chapter 6, but I wouldn't swear to it. Anybody know for sure?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it is one of the second chapter in the Sthita Prajna. In that context, I think it comes.
Yes.
But
Well,
100
Bhaskar,
I don't remember.
all of these chapters are short, so you shouldn't have any trouble finding it if you read chapters 4 through 6. It's in one of those. But I don't, I'm sorry. It's just my mind doesn't work that way, that I remember chapter and verse.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, dears. 17, concentration upon a single object may reach 4 stages: examination, discrimination, joyful peace, and simple awareness of individuality. I'll read it again. Concentration upon a single object. This is one of the myriad things that arise in our awareness. And of course, there's always the implication that this is something that in some wise we should practice if we're going to make progress in Raja Yoga. Concentration upon a single object may reach 4 stages: examination, discrimination, joyful peace, not just peace. Notice joyful peace. Why? It is the nature of the Atman. Joy, bliss, is the nature of the Atman. So when we draw closer to the thing itself within an object, we discover this joyful peace. 4 stages: examination, discrimination, joyful peace, and then simple awareness of individuality. That thing is a thing in itself, apart from all other things, apparently. In order to understand this and the following aphorisms, we must now study the structure of the universe as it is presented in Vedanta philosophy. I'll repeat that. In order to understand this and the following aphorisms, we must now study the structure of the universe as it is presented in Vedanta philosophy. Vedanta is the philosophy based on the teachings of the Vedas, the earliest Hindu scriptures, or to put it in, since we can avoid the word Hindu if we wish, it is the basis of all Sanatana Dharma, with the exception of Jainism and Buddhism. Vedanta is the philosophy based on the teachings of the Vedas, the earliest Hindu scriptures. First, let us consider the basic reality, capital R. First, let us consider the basic reality. The reality considered as the innermost self of any particular creature or object. In other words, the Atman, that self to which we're drawn, as Yajnavalkya pointed out. That's the proper name. I've been saying it wrong earlier. Yajnavalkya. The reality considered as the innermost self of any particular creature or object is called the Atman, as we have already seen. When the reality is spoken of in its universal aspect, it is called Brahman. So any particularization of it, as it appears in an individual human being, other living, breathing thing, or any object, even what seems to be as lifeless as a rock, is still the Atman. When we speak of it in its universal aspect, it is called Brahman. This may sound confusing at first to the Western students, but the concept should not be strange to the Christian terminology. But the concept should not be strange to them. But the concept should not be strange to them, to think of these things as two separate ways of talking about it. It should not be strange to them. Christian terminology employs two phases, God immanent and God transcendent, which makes a similar distinction. God immanent, that is to say, Christ said, I am the vine, ye are the branches. This is God immanent. What the vine is rooted in is God transcendent. We can say that this is a similar conceptualization, similar distinction. Again and again in Hindu and Christian literature, we find this great paradox restated. that God is both within and without, instantly present, and infinitely elsewhere, the dweller in the atom and the abode of all things. But this is the same reality, the same Godhead, seen in its two relations to the cosmos. Remember, we're studying the universe itself. These relations are described by two different words simply in order to help us think about them. These words exist only so that we can think about the particular and the universal or infinite. They imply no kind of duality. Atman and Brahman are one. So this is such a fundamental idea, as the Swami says, for us to understand what will be said in the further aphorisms. Are there any questions or comments that need to be made with regard to these two formulations of what is actually capital O1 behind the screen of our apparent awareness?
Can we take this immanent as the God within us, and transcendent is something,
Absolutely. Absolutely, Balakrishna. God within you is, in the particularized sense in which it is sometimes used, that idea, it is spoken of as the Atman. But when that Mahavakya says, Tattvamasi, it is speaking of you as Brahman. And it is said that one who realizes Brahman, that is to say, has the realization of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, becomes Brahman. But it's not necessary to reach that state. Om Brahmarpanam, Brahma Avir, Brahmagno Brahmanahutam, Brahmayeva tena gantavyam Brahma karma samadhina. Hari Om Tat Sat. Brahman is the offering. Brahman is the ritual. Brahman is she or he who offers to the fire that is Brahman. He or she who sees Brahman in every action attains to Brahman. We can, through our spiritual practices, come to that point when we see Brahman in every action and thereby attain to Brahman. This is part of Karma Yoga. That also is in chapter 6, I believe. 5 or 6. So
that was in chapter 4, I think it's 20 or 21st verse.
all right, dear. I'm glad you know. As I say, most of what I'm speaking about is in chapters 2 through 6. Most of what I'm talking about is in 4 through 6. But that's thank you, Bala. Anything else from anyone about this distinction, this apparent distinction between the individual and the universal?
So I know you brought up the Yagnavalkya, and I'm kind of interested if you get one or two sentences as to what the background of who is Yagnavalkya and then how it implies to this
Okay,
particular text.
Yajnavalkya was a realized soul. He was married. In those days, rishis were family men. He is part of the Big Forest Upanishad or Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The Big Forest Upanishad, the reason it's called that is that it encompasses the teachings, the utterances of a number of different sages that lived in the forest. So in this big forest, there is this sage, Yajnavalkya. At some point, he says to his two wives, one of whom is Maitreyi, he says, well, I'm going off now to live the last quarter of my life in solitude. And I'm leaving all my wealth to you so that you will be provided for. There will be nothing lacking. So take the wealth and fare thee well. And Maitreyi says to him, wait just a minute. What is it that you know that allows you to do this, to break away from all worldly attachments and go live in silence, solitude, and meditation? And he gives her a dissertation. It's one of the most famous of the Upanishadic dissertations. Yajnavalkya says to Maitreyi, well, my dear, let's start with this. The reason that the wife is attracted to the husband is for the self. It is for the self that the wife is attracted to the husband. It is for the self that the husband is attracted to the wife. That's the beginning of a long litany, always in the Upanishads we find, and we find it in the Gita as well. These litanies that try to give us an understanding of the comprehensive nature of the teaching. It isn't just restricted to husband and wife. It goes on to children and this and that and the other things. And as you've heard me say this morning or this afternoon, it extends to the Ferrari or the big beautiful house or that vacation on the Riviera or whatever the blazes it is that draws you to be attracted to something. It is the self within that you're truly drawn to. But because you don't realize the infinite nature of the self in that, and only see it in its finite nature, it doesn't seem truly satisfactory. So if I have one big house, I might want a bigger big house. If I had an 8-cylinder Maserati, I might want a 12-cylinder 6-gear Ferrari. So we keep this restless mind keeps trying to find the infinite in the finite. And so this is what Yajnavalkya dilates on to Maitreyi. It goes on for some time. And it isn't very far into the Brihadaranyaka, so if you get a lovely translation, and I strongly suggest Swami Prabhavananda's, simply because, like all of his books in this regard, it is without commentary and scholarship. It's simply a clear Swami Prabhavananda was a Shakespeare scholar. It's a very clear and well written, even as a Shakespeare scholar, he invited others to help him. And I don't remember who it was that helped him with the Upanishads. It might have been Frederick Manchester. But in any case, he used very, very skillful writers in English and people who are used to thinking the most complicated thoughts in English to help him write these things. So if you get a copy of Swami Prabhavananda's translation of the Upanishads, which is called Breath of the Eternal, Breath of the Eternal, of the Upanishads, you'll find a beautiful translation, very readable translation of that Upanishad and what Yajnavalkya tells Maitreyi about the nature of the self and how whatever we're drawn to, whatever it seems to us that we're the reason, it is for the self, because that is the compelling nature of the inner or true reality, capital R. Does that get it for you?
Thank you very much. That was excellent. It gives me a fantastic background, and I will look into that book.
Okay, very good. Okay, anything else from anyone? We're coming close to the end of the hour. It's 12:57, so we'll probably stop there. With the Swami starts his next comment, you can see he's making a pivot. What is this cosmos? What is it made of? So now he's going to summarize, in a sense, what Swami Vivekananda talks about in Jnana Yoga, because that's essentially what Jnana Yoga is all about. What is this cosmos? What is it made of? And how did we get here? We're just studying on Wednesday nights, by the way, probably his summum bonum of his commentaries on this. It's called The Real and the Apparent Man. We've just started, so if you haven't been joining us on Wednesday night, you might want to join us for Swami Vivekananda's The Real and the Apparent Man, which is the last chapter. There's a conclusion that has been gathered from some of the other things that he said, but it wasn't a talk that he gave. This is a talk that he gave in New York in probably 1896, The Real and the Apparent Man. And I think, since we're so not very far into it, that we might start it again from the beginning for anyone who wasn't with us when we just started it this past Wednesday. Anything else from anyone before we close? All right, dears. What is it we're being taught here? What is the Yoga Sutras all about? How to free ourselves from all limitation. You are, as we sit here, we have to agree, we cannot avoid the truth that we seem to be limited. The goal of Patanjali's yoga is spoken of as Kaivalya, independence, independence of all condition and all limitation. Now, if any of you has any real conception of what that means, you are already in that state. We do not know what is meant by living without condition and without limitation. We get glimpses of it, We get glimpses of it, and it is filled with bliss when we do. Filled with bliss because that is the nature of reality, capital R, Satchidananda, bliss absolute, knowledge absolute, existence absolute. So that is what we're studying. And that, as Swami has pointed out, makes it really quite worth the effort. The nearer we get to it, the more we practice what these great yogas teach us, the less limited and less conditioned we become. And there is more joy, more bliss, more peace. So I'll conclude with this. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Abir Moiti. Oh, dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless delusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. And our fond farewell, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we will celebrate the Master's birthday. It'll start with a short talk on the phenomenon of Sri Ramakrishna. This will be followed by 5-minute readings, 3 to 5 minute readings by any devotee who wishes to offer one. I do request 2 things. First, if you do wish to read, you email me about that today so that I can make a list of people who wish to read and call on you. And the second request is that you do respect the 5-minute limit, simply in consideration of your fellow devotees, your fellow congregation members, so that we don't run on too long. And then after the talk and these readings, which will be loving offerings from each one, I'm sure, then we'll do a very sweet but informal worship of the Master here at this shrine so that you can participate. And joyously, the flowers on this property are blooming in some profusion, so we won't even have to go out and buy flowers to decorate the shrine with. We'll be able to use the lovely flowers that are already blooming in some glorious profusion on the property. So with that, any final thought from anyone? And if you do wish to read, please do email me. If you don't have my email address, you can email me through the website. Just go on the website, vedantaatlanta.org, Vedanta Atlanta, 1 string of letters, vedantaatlanta.org. Go on the website. Right away, you'll find a way to email me through the website. So if you wish to read, please do. And do please respect the 5-minute limit. Any final thoughts from anyone? All right, dearest dears. Until tomorrow, we'll see you at 11 a.m. tomorrow, Mother willing. Jai Ma. It being Saturday and her day. Jai Ma.